before we started rolling, we were talking about the effects of DMT. I told you I was super afraid to try it again by myself.
Yeah.
And people I've spoken with that know more about this than I do, which isn't saying much, said that there's not really any documented cases of people having any like real adverse effects of using DMT or overusing DMT.
Yeah, that's not been my experience. Every once or twice a year, I get a note from a family member or a friend of somebody who has smoked way too much DMT. And they develop a certain kind of mental state. It's kind of messianic, that they feel they have the answer. And if people don't agree with their answer, they get mad.
Really?
Yeah, so they're convinced that it's kind of messianic in nature.
Have you ever heard of anybody smoking DMT and sort of like not coming back fully, getting like stuck in like this weird slippery version of reality like for forever? Because I have friends that in high school that took a lot of LSD or smoked a lot of weed, and after a certain point they were just never the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's hard to say. I mean, personalities get modified, I think, under the or can be modified under the influence of a psychedelic. But it's more, I think, that they made those changes more real in their lives. And that might be what people are referring to as that they've changed. They maybe took more action on some of the ideas they had than otherwise would have been the case.
Yeah.
I think that's how psychedelics work, actually, is they just increase the strength and power of things which already exist in the mind. If you want to be a happier person, you might become happier after taking a psychedelic because it's convinced you that it's good to be happy.
Yeah, I recently had a gentleman on here who said he's done DMT thousands of times.
Right.
And I was blown away by that.
I wonder.
And he's explaining to me he uses it as a tool to improve his life. And he was saying like he will go into it with the intention of seeking an answer to something or to solving some specific problem in his life. And the guy's been super successful. He's created like this super successful rock band. He's a part of all these, crazy ventures. He's traveling the world. He's got a great life. And so he's a great example of, a great testimony to the fact that this could possibly work. But yeah, that aspect of it, I think, has me the most interested.
Yeah, one of my old colleagues in the 1960s, before DMT was that well known, smoked a 1/4 pound of DMT in a year. And he, there are a couple of interesting things. As a result, he became convinced that the world was made out of vibrations. And he developed visual mathematics as a result of, this prolonged exposure to the DMT state.
Wow. Visual mathematics?
Visual mathematics. Yeah, it's a thing, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's one of the founders.
What is it?
It's the visual representation of mathematical equations.
Okay.
Yeah.
Huh.
You know those Mandelbrot sets?
I don't think so.
Yeah, that's visual mathematics. Mandelbrot sets.
Mandelbrot set. Go to the images. Is this it?
Yeah.
Huh. That's bizarre.
Yeah, every point is a mathematical equation being played out in some form or another. You change the variables in the equation, but it's the same formula. And the visual patterns change.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So, you were the first person in the United States to do human research on psychedelics. You are probably like one of the most legendary people in the psychedelic world. And one of the things that really blew my mind was that you were explaining on, I think it was Hamilton's podcast. I could be wrong. I think it was Hamilton's podcast. You were explaining how you had the idea to get this funded when you were hanging out with Terrence McKenna and you guys decided that it would be the best way to get it funded through the war on drugs.
Right. Right.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it was 1988. And I was kind of at a crossroads of where my career was going. The melatonin and pineal work hadn't quite panned out the way I wanted it to. But I was still interested in the pineal gland and in psychedelics mostly. Yeah. And I met Terrence a year or two before. He's the first person to give me DMT, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, 1986 or something.
Oh, wow.
And then a couple of years later, I was driving down from Canada, stopped at their place, and we spent the day up in his loft library.
Wow.
Yeah, and we just the war on the war on drugs was in full steam ahead. There was a lot of money being poured into it.
What a clever idea.
And we came up with the idea of the ultimate study: give DMT to people and see what it does. You can't really argue with that. And I described it as a abusable drug. It's the prototypical classic psychedelic. And people were still using psychedelics, and we didn't know how they worked or really what they did in the face of like 20 years of intervening animal research. So there were pretty straightforward kinds of arguments that could have been used against studying the drug or for studying the drug. And I framed it as, let's find out more. And no value judgment placed on the work, no therapy or religious motivations.
What do you think DMT in a healthy dose does to the human brain? Not necessarily. I know it's speculative when you're talking about what it's doing to the brain when you're taking it, when it's active.
Right.
But like, kind of like when it subsides, like, what do you think the after effect is?
Well, I think it works on the imagination. So if you can, divide the mind into an intellectual part and an imaginative part, it's based on some of the ideas of Aristotle, that the imaginative part of the mind holds on to, perceptions, emotions, the feelings of certainty, and the intellectual part is ideas, abstract notions. So I think that DMT ultimately stimulates the imagination as compared to stimulating the intellect. It makes things, it appears, but what the appearance actually means is more dependent on the intellect.
Yeah. One of the things David Nichols was explaining to me was that there was a technical word he used to describe how it actually increases neural density. And there's this term, the scientific term for these neural branches, like the branches on trees,
right? That
they grow and they become more connected and more full. In the brain.
Yeah, he was probably talking about neurogenesis and neuroplasticity.
Yes, I think that's what it was.
Yeah, so stem cells converting to neurons is neurogenesis. You're making new neurons.
Right.
And neuroplasticity is increasing the number and complexity of connections among neurons.
Yeah, because every person I've ever talked to that does DMT, they're all super smart.